So I've already painted a couple pieces because apparently I didn't press record. I have my phone on vibrate, so I didn't hear the ding when it was playing, so I just assumed it was, but it's not. So all I've done, first of all, open the box that your kit came in, and that's what you're going to paint on. I just have an old piece of paper, but the boxes are great because it protects your area, but then you can also put your paint directly on the box, and then you can just throw it all away at the end. The second thing I did is I like to organize my pieces by color. That way I don't have to worry about my foam brushes or my wedges drying out. If you're the type that just likes to paint as you go, then you might want to wrap up, like just get some saran wrap and wrap up the wedge or the foam brush as you're going. But since I am going off the picture because that's what most everybody wanted, I've already painted this. I generally record it the first time I paint it. I just didn't have time this month. So I am painting it again for this video. So I'm just gonna do the same colors I did. But I'm excited to see your variations if you decide to go another way. So what I've done so far is I painted the background for this piece. I used the foam brush for this since this was a larger area. Just to recap, when you're painting with a foam brush, kind of keep it angled up, start in the middle as you're dragging the paint outwards. That way paint is not dripping down the sides, and then your sides will stay clean of paint. And then I painted this little triangle, which is the door for the tent, and I used a wedge for that. Then I went on to my green pieces, which that is going to be, I think the only green pieces are the trees for this cutout, the Adventure is Calling background, and then this little standalone pine tree. So when I painted these trees, what I said before, and didn't record it, is when you get your wedge, when you have paint on it, when you get towards the trunk and these outer edges, since you're painting those different colors, just use the very tip of your wedge and kind of angle it and just slowly go along this side. If you get paint on it, it's okay, you can just paint over it, but that will make it easier if you don't have to cover. I'm going to do the second coat of this. So as a reminder, you dip your wedge in the paint, dip off the excess, and then just gently dab up and down. You've heard me say it 1,000 times, but just in case this is your first time watching a video tutorial, use a little bit of paint and plan on doing 2 to 3 coats. If you use too much, it's going to drip down the sides and it's going to look really messy. So if you like the clean edges, just do light coats, a couple, and then your edges will look really nice and clean. If you do happen to get some on the edges, you can always run a baby wipe or sand it or just leave it because it's homemade. I'm going to use a foam brush for this piece because it is a little bit larger. So I did send you a foam brush for the green color. And then I'm going to move on to the gray. There's really nothing extra special about the gray, so I'm going to push pause as I'm going on that so this video doesn't get too long. What I did say before is on these little teeny tiny pieces, the easiest thing is to get your tweezers. I don't pick the word up because then they can shoot off. Where is I'm looking for my gray wedge. Maybe it was this one. Oh, it was. I just didn't put very much on it. Get tiny bit of paint. Then I pinch the letter with the tweezers just to hold it down. I'm not picking it up. That will make it so that it doesn't lift as you're bouncing up and down with the paint. And so just pinch and hold. Oops, you have to actually get the letter. And that way it holds it down, and then you can move on. So for the gray color, oh, also with the green, I didn't say, it's all these tiny letters for, it came wrapped in this piece, is where you park it. So I'm also gonna do those green. For the gray, I'm sure you're just following along your pictures, but just in case, I'm doing the tent, the mountain cutout, and then the lettering for this, which is the bottom part, is calling. So I'm gonna do that, press pause, do that, and then we'll come back for the more detail work. One thing that I forgot to mention, just in case, like I say, this is your first one. On this one, and there's obviously two other cutouts where you see this etching. It's okay if you get paint in there. You don't have to worry about that. The shiplap lines will go over because you don't want to flood those with paint because you want to see those. With this is just a guideline that we're going to lay the letters on. So as you can see, I have quite a bit of paint. Well, not quite a bit, but paint is covering it. I'm not going to worry about it because as long as I can see the guide to lay the letters down once it's dry, then that's all you need. Okay, once you have all the navy and the green painted, I'm going to move on to white. Yes, I was thinking maybe I should do yellow since there's not very much, but we'll just do white. So same thing, I'm going to do most of it while the video is paused, but I wanted to go over the shiplap just in case it's been a while since you've done one. So dip your foam brush in the white paint. I'm going to do the Camping is My Therapy shiplap round, but it's going to be the same thing for the mini s'more shiplap round. So again, you don't have to worry about the lettering because that's just a guide, but you don't want to flood the shiplap lines with paint because you want those to stand out. So I'm not going to put too much on my brush, and I'm going to kind of bounce off most of it in between the lines, and then I'm going to start spreading it. So it's kind of a slower process because you're using such little amount of paint. Ooh, this is a really good example. So I'm going to set this down because as you see, the top is dark, but then right here I got some paint in. So I'm going to get my toothpick while the paint is wet, and I'm just going to run it along. I don't know if you can see or if the light's too bad, but it cleans it, oh, except for when I missed right there, but it cleans it right up. So then you can see the dark again. So that is going to be it's kind of hard to paint while I'm showing. That's kind of the process. And of course you go faster than the actual tutorial. So again, I got paint in the shiplap line, but not the bottom one, which is silly. I wipe on my hand. You can wipe on your box so you're not getting paint all over. So when I did this one, you can't really tell. Maybe I didn't do it on this one. I didn't. It was the insert, which I have displayed. So I actually only did one coat of paint on both the shiplap rounds because I wanted to sand them so that the wood could show through, so it looked more rustic. So if you want it to be white and shiplap, do 2 to 3 coats of this. Pull out the paint, let it dry, paint again, make sure that you're getting the paint out with your toothpick. But if you want it to look more rustic, then only do 1 coat. It will make it way easier to sand, trust me. So I'm going to do that with the rest of my white colors. For this trailer, if you're wondering why my pieces look so bad, yours look way better than mine do. I used MDF on my pieces because it's way cheaper. And so I used maple on the ones that I painted to display, but these ones, since I'm just doing it for the tutorial, so MDF is that like brown color, but then I also didn't mask, which means you get the char marks. So That's why my pieces look the way they do. When you get to these smaller, or not the smaller pieces, the trailer, that's what I'm talking about. You're going to use your wedge, and you shouldn't have to worry as long as you're dipping off like that on your box or paper plate. You shouldn't have to use your toothpick for the details, because when you're bouncing up and down and you're doing such a light coat, you can see that it does not get in there at all. If it does, if you use too much paint on accident, then just use your toothpick while the paint is wet to get it out. But when you're using the wedge, it shouldn't get in there at all. So I'm gonna push pause. Don't forget to paint this. Be careful with these words. They're a little bit delicate. You should be able to move them around just fine, but they are delicate, so you don't want to do it too much. So all the colors all the pieces that you want white, do that, and then we're going to come back for the brown. I have a couple different techniques I want you to use, so that's going to be exciting. Okay, so we are on the brown, and the first thing I'm going to do is have you take out your baby wipe. So if you use a wedge, you are saturating the piece with paint, and you're painting, obviously. If you use the baby wipe, it kind of acts as, it kind of gives you the look of a stain versus paint. So if you're wanting a stained look, this is what you're gonna wanna use. And I put one in all of your boxes. Make sure that it's still damp. If it dried out, you can try spritzing it with water. You don't want it to be wet, or you'll just need to go get some baby wipes. So if you see, I don't know if you can tell, but it kind of goes dark and then light and then dark. So it's kind of like an ombre. I used a baby wipe and a wedge on that. So, oh, and then if you look on this marshmallow, this was one coat with the baby wipe, and I think I did 3 to do this. So you can just layer the amount. So what you do is I just put my finger, wrap the baby wipe around my finger, and I just do a little tiny bit of it. And then I'm just going to wipe. And the more you wipe, the lighter it's gonna be. It's gonna look a little bit different on mine just because my cutouts are just MDF. So it will look a little bit different, but it's gonna be the same concept. So just do a little bit and work in sections so that you can make it as even as possible. So as you can see, I'm adding that. That's where, this is what it looked like. You could see more of the wood in this one, but MDF is just all one background. So if you wanted this to be plain, then use the wedge on this piece. But if you were following along with the picture, I just did one coat with the baby wipe. And the great thing is it's like almost instantly dry. So then I'm going to take the graham cracker and do the same thing, just the littlest bit of paint. And then I'm just going to, so you can see the difference right now. And then as far as the chocolate, you can either use the wedge or you can just build layers. So I'm gonna give that a few seconds to dry, and then I'm gonna go back over it again. I did the same thing with these logs. So I actually think I did a wedge for the background log. This one, what you're gonna wanna do is layer it so you know where to stop the brown, because obviously that's the part that needs to be red. So that I'm going to do the wedge for, because I wanted my background log, I wanted to kind of have more depth. So I wanted it to be solid in the background. So I'm going to do 2 coats with the wedge, but the log cutout, I'm only going to do 1 coat of stain so that it is, so it has a different depth to it. Okay, then my chocolate is dry, so I'm going to do another coat on that. Another wiping, I should say. Okay, then if you want a toasted marshmallow look like I did here, if you can see that, don't add any more paint. Take one of the pieces that you have already used, like for your Hershey's chocolate bar, and then I'm gonna rub it even more on my paper plate to get it off. And then I'm going to do the softest, like just barely touch it and go back and forth. Also, my fingers were dirty, so I got a little bit there. But anyways, if you can see, I'm just gonna go back and forth, kind of where a toasted marshmallow look would be, and then call that good. Okay. Then, I'm just wondering, did I do any other? Oh, yes, I did. I'm looking at my already painted pieces. I was like, what else did I do? So on this piece, I'm not gonna do it on this one because the MDF is already dark, but I used stain for the trunks, or the baby white for the trunks there. Now I'm going to use the baby white method for the letters for camping and therapy. Be a little bit delicate with this because the letters are, since they're held together, if you do happen to accidentally break one, then you can piece it together with the glue, but try to be gentle. Go as slow as you need. I'm just hurrying through because since I already have mine painted, I don't really care how these completely end up because I'm not keeping them. Okay, I'm gonna do one more coat on my chocolate. I want it to be a little bit darker than it's showing up on the MDF. Okay, now that these are painted with your white, how I did the ombre is for the camping, I went top dark to the lighter, and with therapy I did the opposite. The bottom part is lighter or darker up to lighter. So let's get out the camping first. So I'm going to turn them to the side. Actually, I was gonna say upside down, but that's easier for me. I'm gonna get my wedge, get the little bit of paint on it, dab off the extra. Then I'm gonna start at the very top. I know this is so hard to see. Wait, do I have a white piece of paper? No. I'm gonna start at the very top of the C, and as I go halfway down, I'm going to dab lighter and lighter and lighter and then lift off. So I really do need a white background here. I'll use my baby white. Is that easier? Yeah. So for the A, same thing. Start at the top and then lighter, 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 and halfway lift off. And just try to stop approximately the same area. So like the middle, or if you want to go a little bit farther down, whatever you decide to do, just try to keep it even. The biggest thing is just using less and less pressure as you go. I mean, you're barely tapping it anyways to begin with. Itchy nose. And then therapy, I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna start at the bottom. We'll start with this A and go lighter until I'm halfway and then be done. And if you ever get a color that you want it to be lighter, just get a baby wipe, and you can do the baby wipe method on that if you want like the stained look. It can work, it will work on any color. Oh yes, I didn't show you with the pine tree. I got distracted. Okay, so get a tiny bit, and because since I'm only using this as like an accent, I rub the most of it off on my paper plate. And then on this pine tree, I wanted to get a little bit more dimension. So I just, as you can see, I just rubbed brown down the side because it kind of just gave it a shadowy look, except for I just dropped paint on there, but I'll wipe it off with my baby wipe and all will be good. So again, with a really light touch, because you can always add more. I mean, you can always paint over it too. So it's not, nothing is ever permanent. And I'm just gonna rub just until you see, I don't know if you can see the little bit of darkness on there. I just wanted a little bit of shadow. I only went down one side for mine, but you can do whatever side you want. Okay, so my pieces are all dry, and we're going to move to the yellow. So I did the same method somewhat when I'm talking kind of about the ombre. So let me get, I'm gonna push pause so that I can get my stuff organized, and then we'll go over that. Okay, get your log and flame, and then this little flame piece, and then 2 clean wedges. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to paint this flame red, the background one. And I'm going to put my log over it so I can see that I've got a good, that I was correct with the brown. And so I'm going to just do 2 coats. I will need 2 coats of this for sure. So I did 1 red, and then we're gonna move to the yellow. And that's what this little accent flame is. Yours will cover much better in 2 coats. Mine is not going to cover well because it is MDF, so usually you have to do 3 or 4, and I'm not going to. So you will just see some of the MDF show through, and it's just gonna look a little bit darker than most, but you'll get the idea. Okay. While I wait for that to dry, I'm just going to do one of these accent stars so I can show you what I do with that. It's just one of the little extra stars I sent. Okay, so now that these flames are painted, so as you can see, I don't know if you can see from the picture, maybe go to the Facebook so you can zoom in and see the picture. This isn't totally yellow and this isn't totally red. It's because I wanted to mix them together so that it just looks really cool. So now I'm gonna take the red sponge that I used, and I'm going to barely, I'm just gonna actually use my finger to hold this down. Barely, oh wait, I'm actually gonna dip it in the yellow first. Can you see? So it's kind of mixing. Make sure you're doing this like on your box or on the plate so that you're not getting all of your yellow mixed up, because if you do that, then you don't have any extra in case you need to paint over it. So then I'm going to bounce it up and down because that kind of mixes the colors together, and I'm going to so lightly tap up and down, and then mostly get yellow. And start in the middle and kind of go down, because that will help blend it. And if you want more red, do red. So I basically just went over this until I was happy with how much color there was. And it's the tiniest amounts that make the adjustments. And then for the red, I'm going to use, where did you go? Oops. Where in the world did my yellow wedge go? Oh, right here, right in front of my face. So I'm going to take my yellow wedge and I'm going to dip it in my red paint. And dip, oh, not very much yellow stayed on this one, so I'm actually going to mix it more. Dip in the yellow and in the red. There's no science to this. It's literally like experimentation. And then I'm starting at the top of the flame, and as I'm moving down, the same thing with the Camping Therapy, just getting lighter and lighter as you're moving down until you're happy with the blending. If you want more yellow, it just depends if you want like a really subtle ombre or if you want it to be more drastic. So this is more orangey red because of the brown underneath. And then the flame, I don't know if you can tell. And then once they move on top of each other, it just looks really cool instead of just a stark red and a stark yellow. And then as far as the stars, I need well, right there. The stars, I kind of did the same thing, painted them yellow, and then wait for that to dry. Paint all of your stars and your moon, even the little itty bitty mini ones for this piece. They were like so tiny. Once they dry, then I dipped this same paint or this same wedge in the white, got most of it off, and then I very, 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 very lightly just went over one side of the star. I'll have to go and get one that's completely dry because this one's kind of wet, so it's blending a little bit more than normal. So that will just make it same thing, give it a little bit more dimension. So I'm gonna let all these pieces dry, and then we'll come back when it's ready to put them all together. I forgot to show you two more little details that I added to mine. So the little trailer, this guy. So I took this detail brush and I wanted to paint a line, and so I did, of navy blue. And then, oh, can you see it focus? And then I wanted to add yellow, and I just used my toothpick and I just did a yellow line. So it doesn't look perfect because I don't have a perfectly straight hand, but it's just a fun little detail I thought that added some to it. So I dipped in the navy paint and then got some of the excess out. If you have a skinnier brush or like a finer detail brush, that's going to give you better results. But I did not have those to give. So, plus I think it just adds a nice homemade touch. I don't know. It just doesn't need to be perfect, right? It just shows that you made it, you hand painted it. And how cool is that? I think that's pretty awesome. Get off the excess. And then let that dry. It shouldn't take that long. And then go and rinse this out because you're gonna need it for the next step. I guess technically you want to rinse it out. Go do that. Then get your toothpick once this is completely dry. Dip it in the yellow paint or whatever paint you want. And then I had to dip it a million times, but same thing. If you have a skinny detail paintbrush at home, if you have artsy kids, then you can use that instead. Okay, so then it just kind of, sorry, the sun is going, so the lighting is bad. I need to find a better place with better lighting. Okay, I'm not gonna rinse mine off because I have the camera in here and not outside, so I can't really show you unless, I'll try to do it very softly in here. So as you can see on this Get Lost and Find Yourself, I have a whole bunch of like stars in the background. You can go ahead and like use the back of this, use your toothpick, and you can dot them, but I wanted them to look different because every star is different, and I really liked how sometimes that kind of looks like a shooting star in a way. So what I did, I cleaned off my brush, but like I say, I'm not going to do that right now because I'm not going outside anyways. So I did that, then I dipped it inside my white paint so that there was like a glob on there. Then I aimed this, I just did it on, like I had like a scrap piece of wood, or you can just put newspaper or something on the grass, and I just took my finger and I flicked it to get the big globs off. Then I aimed it at this and just flick. It's hard to do standing or holding. So get the first one off to the side and then flick, 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 flick. Worst case scenario, you don't like how it turned out, you can paint over it with navy, but I think it looks, you don't want to get too close like I just did, because then, I don't know, maybe that will look cool. So that will give you the star effect, so that when you put this over it, you'll have a background of stars. Okay, now let's get this all together. So before I press pause, what you're going to want to do is get to go. So that's, I'm going to push pause and do that. So for instance, my little shiplap round, my marshmallow, my graham cracker, and my chocolate. So I have all the pieces for that, and then I'm going to set it aside. That's going to make it go so much easier. So do that, and then we'll get it all together. Okay, we'll go from easiest to hardest. Easiest, tree. You don't have to do a darn thing to it, so you can set that aside. Actually, I'm going to show you something you can do to it. So in this kit, this is new for everybody. I sent you these. So I send you the little stands that fit together, and those I just expect most people reuse those like from month to month, and you just keep them out so you don't have to keep storing them. If you want to, because I send 2 with every kit, if you want them with every kit, then you know that as you fill out the form, you can always just say you don't have any and I'll send them. It's not a big deal. But these are more permanent stands, just in case you need extra, more than just the 2 that you have. So what this does is, ooh, it's kind of big on this tree, but we'll still do it. First things first, when you open your super glue, don't open it over your project. Do I need to puncture this? No, okay. So you're going to take, this part is the top. So I'm going to glue it onto the back of this tree like this. So remember, just a little bit of super glue goes a really long way. come on. I wonder if I already dried this one out. It actually, I think, is already dried out. Let me get a different super glue. Never mind, I'm done. I thought I had already used this before. I didn't, so I needed to open it. And don't do that over your project just in case it splurts out. Okay, so a little bit goes a long way. You just do a little tiny bit and then get it as flat as you can. And then once that's dry, this piece, it should just be able to sit in there, but if you're finding that it's constantly sliding, then you may need to do a line of super glue there and keep it permanent. I personally don't love doing that option because then it stores like this. So you can't just keep it in a Ziploc bag and throw it in your thing. So hopefully, oh, I should get that on camera. So it just stands like that. If you can see that. So, like I say, you may have to put a line of super glue in because it's not like a super, super tight fit, but that just gives you an extra option to get your pieces to stand. Okay, now for the tent. This one's really easy. It only has one piece, this little triangle. Try to get it as close into the middle as you can. I just try to eyeball it so that it matches the little things on top, and then you just have to hold it down for a few seconds. Okay, let's do the Adventure is Calling. So first I'm going to do the mountain outline. Oh. I just glued on the bottom part and then line up so that it matches the sides. As you can see, my hands were touching the sides as well as the top. You shouldn't see the top showing through. It should match up really well. Then for the Adventure, I'm only going to put super glue on the thickest parts that I can. So like the top drag down here, I usually like to try to get the ends, and then a little bit there, here, here, and then I'm going to do, I'm not going to squeeze any out. I'm just using whatever was left over on the tip to get the very ends. Then I'm going to hold it up on this end and start with the A and then just press down as I follow the etching. And hold down for like a few seconds. Now, I've shown you this before, so you do whatever is easiest for you. For these little pieces, you can hold them with the tweezers up in the air, put the super glue on, and set them down. If you like doing it that way, I like to get your box or a paper plate. I like to put a little bit of super glue on directly on the box, and then I just dip it quickly in there, dip it on the paper just to remove the excess, and then set it down. The N, actually I'll go in order. Make sure that you're doing these like so. For the S, there's an upside down. There is a right way to have it. So make sure that you do that correctly so that it covers up, oops, so that it covers up the etching and you don't see that through. The C, same thing. Bit quickly dip, quickly dip. And with these little pieces, you barely have to hold them at all. And I just like to make sure that they're going to match up. Okay, I want to make sure that you can see dip, dip, and place. Got the L. Probably need to replace my super glue or replenish it. Okay. I'm not going to keep finishing that. So adventure is calling. So you finish it for the whole thing, and then same thing for the inside of the mountain pieces. I'm not going to put too much on there because you don't need it. Just going to do like a little tiny bit there, except for quite a bit just came out. Oops. And I just super glued my finger together. Name one person who hasn't. Okay, let's move on to camping. So, same thing, I'm just going to do the thicker pieces. So this part of the C, this part of the A, this part of the M, M, P. And I am like barely even squeezing at all because you do not want a lot of super glue. Start with the C, hold the other ends up, and slowly start setting it down so that it matches. And then go with ing. Come on. Start with the I and then the G. Okay, now when you do the is my, this trailer one, home is where you park it, it also has a Y and two I's. So you want to make sure that you're using the correct one. The Y on home is where you park it is slightly bigger than the Y on camping is my therapy. The I on camping is my therapy is also slightly smaller than the other two. So make sure you have the correct one. Otherwise, let's see. Yeah, it doesn't quite fit, like you will see the etching through it. So I'm going to do the same technique. I'm going to use my tweezers to dip in and put it on the etching because these are such small letters. Let's put the fire together. Put the log first. Make sure that you've already matched it up so you know which way goes up and which way goes down so that it matches well. And then the flame. And the flame can really go however you want it. And then put it in the middle. Do your letters before you do your flame so that you can match it up, but I'm trying not to waste your time because it's all the same process. And then eventually it will look wonderful. Okay. And then when we do this one, I didn't even paint my moon and stars. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put for sure on the trees, then do a really quick, like hardly squeeze at all pass around the outer edges, and then like just random letters so that it holds it down. You need to work quickly because this does dry somewhat quickly. You don't need every letter. And then match up. I like to match up the bottom corners and move up to the top corners. And this should match perfectly. And then press down for just a few seconds. And then your moon and stars can go anywhere. And I would do the same thing. Hold your tweezers, hold them in your tweezers, dip, and then set down. So kind of have an idea of where you want the moon, where you want the star. And oh, the s'mores, I almost forgot about them. Okay. Oops. Okay, so let's do the graham cracker first. Easy enough. I kind of did mine so it kind of tilts over the side. so it's not perfectly straight. Kind of makes it a little bit whimsical. Same thing for my, let me move my hair. Same thing for my chocolate. And then my marshmallow, what I did is I set my marshmallow on to figure out where I wanted it. Then I tried to eyeball, okay, where does the glue need to be so it's not just dripping down? And basically just this edge for me. And then hold that down for just a few seconds. Do you like this? Want. And so then that's done. Okay. And then I'm not going to glue the home is where you park it because it's the same process. So I moved quickly because I know most people, I think all people, only watch this for the painting details. So if I went too fast on this one, normally I'm painting it live, so I finish completely. But since I already had it painted, I did not finish this one. So if I skipped something and you're like, hey, I'm new to this and I need to see what's going on, send me a message and I will either do a live with you or I can just talk you through it, however you learn best. But just let me know. But I did a post or a poll last month and most people said they just needed like painting details for like detail work. So as far as the moon and stars, the bigger moon and stars, those, when you unwrapped your package, you would see strings in there. So you can just use these as accent pieces. Let's say you wanted to put, well, not right there because that would be silly. So let's say you just wanted to do the moon somewhere and then you wanted like extra stars you could glue them to an extra piece. You can just set them around your tier tray, or what I actually gave you the string for, you can super glue it. Honestly, hot glue would probably be better. Just do a bead of hot glue with the string so that they're hanging, and then you can tape them to your tier tray so that they're dangling around. And I thought that would be so cute. So you don't have to use the stars, but if you do tape the string to the back, then they would just look really good dangling all around. So anyways, let me know if you have any questions, if you need extra details, and I can't wait to see your finished pieces.